A record number of immigrants have entered Canada in recent years, wanting to live the Canadian dream. Even now, despite all the news about the economy, immigration rules, and housing shortages, Canada continues to be a top destination for global immigrants. In 2023, Canada issued over 110,000 invitations to apply, a whopping 136% increase from 2022. But once they arrive in the country, for many new immigrants, it's not the haven they were hoping for anymore. Canada's housing affordability crisis is driving people out of their cities and even out of the country. And the high cost of living, particularly high housing costs, are hitting the recent immigrants the hardest. This means that Indians are among a huge part of those impacted because the number of Indians who moved to Canada in the last few years has increased by a big number, from just about 33,000 in 2013 to nearly 140,000 in 2023, a dramatic rise in 10 years. Indian immigrants are the largest group of those seeking permanent residency in Canada. But now many immigrants want to relocate either away from Canada altogether or they are moving to cheaper places within Canada away from the big cities. 39% of recent immigrants who've spent less than 10 years there are considering moving to another province, away from places like downtown Toronto and Metro Vancouver. Out of the immigrants who are leaving Canada altogether, it's mostly the people who come from countries like the US, Taiwan, and France.
Looking at the folks who are moving out of Canada, a good number of people who are going back to the countries which they came from, which were semi-developed or even developed. That is, people going back to the USA, people going back to Taiwan, people going back to France. So the people who are going back, a larger number, are going back to the countries back home which are economically, let's say, developed. Okay, so they are finding that the Canadian dream is not working out for them in terms of growth. Okay, wages are fine, but unemployment is low, but the wage growth is stagnant in terms of another macro indicator. So now being there, seeing it, the healthcare costs are going up. They need more people in the healthcare sector, immigrants coming in, nurses, doctors, paramedical, etc. Therefore healthcare cost is going up. So combination of these costs and living expenses, etc., is maybe compelling many of the immigrants to go back to their home countries. But keep in mind, the countries that they're going back to are the countries which are somewhat economically better as compared to low income countries.
Canada itself wants to control immigration and population growth since this is fueling their rising cost of living and housing shortages and even their higher unemployment rates. And one way they are doing it is by being less welcoming towards students and reviewing their long-term visa policy for foreign students.
The colleges have increased the fees. There used to be a bank guarantee of, I think, around 10,000 or 11,000 Canadian dollars that a parent would need to give for a child, other than the tuition fee and all. Now that has been virtually doubled. Okay, and that doubling, Canadian government says, is due to the rising cost of living and the rise in the cost of housing. So that when a child goes there, he or she should have enough money to live by at a decent minimum wage kind of a life, right? So they've increased the fee for their for their universities. They've also been cutting down on several universities who were virtually like working as visa shops and offering diploma programs, a 9-month program, a 1-month program in bakery or something like that. So a student from India would go for that, do that 1-year program, 1-year diploma, and then slide into the workforce. Now the Canadian government is making it difficult for such diploma programs to be able to not issue, but to be able to request visas.
However, they can't do without immigrants altogether. What they want is to have skilled immigrants in specific fields instead of a blanket incoming situation. In fact, they're betting big on skilled immigrants to fill the gap in their economy because people are moving out due to the economic situation. Canada is at the risk of a skill shortage if this continues.
The policies of the Canadian government, they're trying to steer away immigration from the open-ended, flow that was, rather to try and focus it to specific industries or sectors for which Canada thinks that it needs the people, especially in sectors like healthcare, construction, IT. So now what Canada seems to be signaling, and not only signaling very clearly, saying that they want people who are trained and skilled in these specific areas more rather than across the board from any other sectors. Trying to move the immigrants geographically away, if possible, from the three large, metro areas, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, because most of the immigrants who go are in these areas. What the Canadian government is trying is to, push people or immigrants into other provinces or remote areas where there is a need, but where immigrants typically do not go. So thereby, they've come up and they have this, the provinces have their own, not their own plans, but the federal government is asking the provinces to draw up their own plans for immigrants and as to what skills are needed for those immigrants. So I think that's another reason which is due to which this whole immigration thing is, getting much more complicated in Canada. Canada's birth rate is, I think, around 1.4, which is way below 2.1, which is a rate at which, nations can keep on replenishing themselves, right? I mean, South Korea is like at zero point 0.8 and they're heading towards a disaster. Japan is similarly very low. But Canada is about 1.4 or 1.5, which is also very low. That means they have an aging population and they need more immigrants to come into their labor force. The question for them is getting the immigrants with the skills that they want and living in other areas other than the traditional three metro areas, so that this whole question of housing shortages or housing costs have gone up in Canada, especially in these three areas. New home buys have gone up by over 50 to 60% in the last 3-4 years. Rentals for housing have gone up by 20 to 30% in the last couple of years. So they want to bring in immigrants, have them dispersed, distributed across Canada in other provinces, in more remote or small town cities, etc., so that they do not, contribute to the housing crisis or the housing costs or the rise in the housing cost in the big metro areas. At the same time, yes, they bring the skills which Canada needs.
But one thing is for sure, many countries which were earlier more welcoming towards immigrants are now recalibrating their needs and deciding their immigration policies.
I see two broad trends. One, like Canada, they're all recalibrating, recalculating, and seeing that what is the exact number of people they need in their workforce in the next 3 to 5 years. They're all looking to cut down on the immigration. At the same time, the total number they're looking to reduce. At the same time, within the reduced numbers, they are wanting to focus on to the sectors which they think they need for their country's economy and workforce.